Hi folks, Pat Healy here for the Laker News. I'm here with PC candidate for Waverley-Fall River-Beaver Bank, Brian Wong. Brian, give a little introduction to the community.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Pat. I always find that these are important, and you've been the voice of the community for a long time, so I really appreciate it. I'm Brian Wong. I'm your progressive conservative candidate on Team Houston, and I'm really working hard to try to get reelected. So, you know what? I've spent the last 3 years really working hard for the community, feel that we've had some really good successes, but my background is in education. I was in education for 28 years. I had 14 years as a principal, 14 years as a teacher. I've always felt that I served my community well, being in education, and I truly feel that I'm serving this community well. And I'm looking forward to continuing that in the future.
All right. What are the top 3 concerns you are hearing from residents in Waverley-Fall River-Beaver Bank? How would you address those concerns if elected as MLA?
Yeah, so the communities are very different. So I would say the top concern that I hear from this section of Fall River really comes down to the Carr Farm development and the treated effluent plant that people were concerned about going into Lake Thomas. However, that has been resolved. So in the spring of this year, the developer came to my office saying that they wanted to do a decrease in density. In other words, they didn't want to have as many homes set up in that area. At the end of the day, we truly need development, and especially for seniors, and that's a seniors housing development for 55 and over. And also very important is that we have a long-term care facility with 144 beds. That's going to be at the top, and that's going to be run by Northwood. So initially the design, before they reduced the density, was going to have a treated effluent plant the treated effluent went into Lake Thomas. So with this reduction, and I worked hard with the developer and the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing to get that approved. So the special planning area, so what it did, it allowed for 160 fewer homes being built in the area, and also took the Northwood long-term care facility away from the treated effluent plant as well. So now the long-term care facility will have their own advanced on-site septic. The Carr Farm development, with its reduction in density, will have their own on-site septic. So nobody has to worry about treated effluent going into the lakes any longer. So that was a big issue in this area. For the Beaver Bank area, the big issue is traffic. There was a Beaver Bank bypass that was on the books 25 years ago. It got taken off. I've had successful conversations with the Joint Regional Transportation Agency, which is a Crown corporation set up by Premier Houston, to really look at what's the infrastructure that we need from downtown Halifax in an hour outside. So it goes up past Truro, down past Kentville. They're looking at all kinds of things like light rail, commuter rail. They're looking at the type of on-ramps and off-ramps and connectors. So I was able, in really the very first day that the Joint Regional Transportation Agency was formed, was to call the executive director and to get the Beaver Bank bypass back on the minds of Public Works.
Okay. The following question has been submitted to us by the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors. Nova Scotians want to own homes, but it is getting increasingly difficult to do so. What will you do to make it easier for local families to buy homes in our community?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, the real solution to the housing crisis is, of course, to build more houses, to have more supply. So we've seen a historic investment in housing, in senior housing, in long-term care facilities from this government, and we'll continue to do so. I'm looking forward to working on that. But we did announce this week that for young families, for first-time home buyers, that Premier Houston has made an agreement with the credit union that first-time home buyers only need 2% down as opposed to 5% down for a down payment. And what that does, a lot of people will say, well, gee, I can afford or barely afford the rent for a 2-bedroom apartment. I could actually pay a mortgage and have more money in my pocket at the end of the day, but they couldn't afford the down payment. With this announcement by Premier Houston, if re-elected, we'll have only 2%. I think it will open the doors for a lot of young people, a lot of first-time home buyers to get into homes.
How do you plan to address the barriers women face in accessing healthcare, including issues with wait times and availability of specialists in fields like gynecology?
So one of the things I'm very proud of that Tim Houston and our government has done, we have really moved the needle on healthcare. We have 250 net new doctors in Nova Scotia. We opened a new medical school in Cape Breton that will graduate 30 students or 30 doctors a year. And those doctors are all committed and will sign a return of service to stay in Nova Scotia. We also have a clinic that's opening up that we have 2 doctors that are going to be assessors for internationally trained doctors to come to Nova Scotia. The turnaround for that is 12 weeks. We'll have 45 new doctors at that time. We've opened new nursing seats in schools. We opened a new nursing school at Acadia University. We have free tuition for CCAs. We have streamlines where CCAs could go to be a licensed practical nurse. A licensed practical nurse could go on to be a nurse and then to a nurse practitioner. So there's all kinds of things that are happening in the healthcare system. And the idea for women to have access is to get more doctors, period. So I think we've moved the needle on that. We've also announced a new clinic for women that are going through menopause. So we didn't open it. That's one of our election promises. So there's no doubt that healthcare is improving. A lot of people are seeing the benefits, but we still have a long ways to go. And you know what? We're looking forward to another new mandate so that we can keep moving the needle.
In Waverley, Fall River, and Beaver Bank, and areas outward, there are many commuters going to work in Halifax and taking their own vehicles because transit just isn't an option or doesn't exist. How would you, as MLA, work with the municipal government to make transit from these areas a priority if elected?
Yeah, so this has always been a pet peeve of mine, and the Liberal carbon tax is a pet peeve. The Liberal carbon tax, which has cost Nova Scotians thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands in total, is a real sore spot for me. The Liberal carbon tax is meant to get people onto transit, use transit more often, to buy electric vehicles. But if you drive through Beaver Bank or Fall River or out through Waverley or out Cobequid Road, we don't have a transit system. It just doesn't make sense. They say there's not enough density, but a former councillor has said there is enough density. So we really need to advocate with the federal government or with the for infrastructure. We need to work with the municipal government in order to get buses here to make us in Fall River, Waverley, Oakfield, Beaver Bank to have better access to transit. If I live in Waverley Manor and I'm a senior, and I don't have a vehicle, it's tough to get groceries. It's tough to go shopping. It's tough to have the independence. So I'm willing to work with whoever I have to in order to make transit a reality here and get rid of the Liberal carbon tax.
Considering the rapid growth in Waverley, Fall River, Beaver Bank, and HRM in general, it is imperative to ensure the infrastructure, transportation, hospitals, schools are adequately developed to meet the increasing demands. If elected, what will you do to attempt to stay ahead of the ongoing problem?
Yeah, of course, you know education is important to me, Pat. One of the things that has kind of really squeezed our schools, and I love the pre-primary program. I think it's a wonderful program, but we didn't have the infrastructure at the time. So what our government has done and will continue to do while we're building new schools is to add the modular schools. The modular school that we have at George P. Vanier, when I talk to the students, I talk to the parents, the teachers, administration, they all love it. It feels like you're within a school, you're within that building. So the modulars are a really good solution. They can go up quickly, they can accommodate a lot of people, and it's not like the old portables that they take a building and set it down. It's a true school within a school. So that's a good temporary solution. While in the meantime, we've announced 5 new schools in HRM alone. So we are doing the things that we need to do. And when we talk about schools and the breakfast program and the lunch program, that every child is going to have a meal when they go to school, I think that's vitally important. But as far as traffic goes, so the Burnside connector is set to open this year. That'll change traffic flows out of here. So, and hopefully we'll see that very soon. The Aerotech connector is set to be finished as well. So anybody that's going out into the into the Oakfield area, out into Fletcher's Lake, will all use that exit, that way to get onto the 118 and a way to get off of the 118. And of course, I've talked about the Beaverbank bypass, which is also something that's really important to people that live in Beaverbank.
The need for housing is increasing, so it's important to have homes for everyone. But with the increased climate crisis and global warming, what would you as MLA do about the increased developments that are causing deforestation, infilling of oceans and wetlands, and overall destruction of the natural habitat happening in the riding and Nova Scotia?
Yeah, Pat, that's a really big question to talk about what's going on here and really what's going on in Nova Scotia. But we do have a plan, and we do have a plan to protect the environment, to protect our coastline. We have a plan to work with municipalities to make sure that our 13,000 kilometers of coastline is protected in Nova Scotia. To have a one plan fits all for Nova Scotians just doesn't work. We have small communities that are very different, and to have a one size fits all, it just doesn't make sense. So we have a plan already in place that's going to protect the environment. The other thing a lot of people don't know about is that we are working hard on green hydrogen. If you go up to the Canso area, there are $2 billion projects. They're multi-billion dollar projects, I should say, so that Nova Scotia can be an exporter of green hydrogen. And we will use that through Nova Scotia. So right now, it's underway. They're building wind farms. They're looking at offshore wind in order to power the plants needed to produce green hydrogen. And Nova Scotia Power also needs to have the infrastructure in place in order to have the power generated so that us as Nova Scotians can use it. We're doing a lot for green energy. The carbon tax, the Liberal carbon tax, is not helping.
Beaverbank was split into two ridings before, but now they're together for this election with our riding here. What can you do to work on making better community connections for Beaverbank and Fall River and Waverley?
So I want to be very clear, Pat. Beaverbank is not part of this community except for that their kids in high school go to Lockview. So if you go grocery shopping or you go to see your doctor or you have an appointment for a massage, you go to Lower Sackville. And it's not part of this, it's not part of Fall River. People from Beaverbank don't come over here to go to Sobeys to go shopping. They don't come over here. So they are separate. And they want to be treated separately, and that's the thing. And I think we have to realize that the rest of this area, whether you're in Waverley or whether you're in Fall River or Fletcher's Lake or Oakfield or Enfield, that's different. You use different roads, you use different service providers, you go to different restaurants, you shop in different areas. So I don't think there's anything that we can do to bring them together. So as far as being an MLA, a lot of people look at Beaverbank as not being in this community. And Beaverbank doesn't feel part of this community. So except for the students that come here, which is great because we look at the students that play on the football teams and the sports team or involved in the clubs, that part is important because we have to make everybody feel welcome in our schools to get a good education. But when you talk to Beaverbankers, they don't feel like they're part of the community.
The last question is, why should residents cast a ballot for you in the election? What sets you above the other candidates?
So I think I have a history of working hard, and I think that's probably part of it. One of the things really early on, I was able to work with SWEPS, who do a lot of the environmental monitoring on our lake system, our canal system, and able to connect to them with Nova Scotia Community College to use their research facilities and to use their large microscopes. I mean, that was really early on. I've been able to work with the community group to get the Fall River turf field. That was one of the things when I stepped in as MLA. The turf field had already been turned down one time by HRM. The committee continued to work hard, continued to work diligently. We were able to find provincial funding. We were able to provide find federal funding. And then our councillors took it back to council. And they figured since we already have those funding in place, I think they thought it was a good idea to go forward with it at the time. So I'm very proud of things like that. Very proud to have on the two ball fields in the football football field on Carmel and High Road. That was something where we gave a provincial grant. We actually gave them a little bit more than they asked for so they could do more things. So Barry Dalrymple and his team to get that deal with the ball fields, I mean, that's a great addition for the community. And they have the football field up there as well. But my son Jacob played on the Lockview Dragons football team in his grade 12 year. Never played one game at Lockview because the field was in such hard shape. So I'm really looking forward to watching kids on that field when that field's finally done. Some of the other infrastructure things that we continue to work on are trails that we've been able to get funding for. We've been able to get funding for the roof at LWF. We've been able to get funding for the museum in Waverley. So there's lots of things that I want to continue to work on, but most of the work outside of the volunteer organizations really happens in the office or in people's homes. I hate sitting in the office. I like to go to meet people in their place. So I'm looking forward to continuing that. And Chima we have a sign down there that talks about Chima. We've got two big grants for Chima. I mean, one was for the accessible docks. The accessible docks allow more people that have mobility issues to get into the kayaks, to get into those canoes, and actually participate in something in the outdoors, which is vitally important. And the other thing was to upgrade their facility where they have their summer programs and their after-school programs. So I'll continue to advocate for this community and work hard for the community.
All right. Thank you very much for taking some time for us this morning.
Was that 8 questions already?
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me mention a couple more things that I will work on while we're here. So there is a group out there that's looking for another ice pad. We need more arenas for ice hockey, for figure skating, and there's a group out there that's forming. I'm looking forward to working with them because there is a provincial, federal infrastructure money that we could bring into that, and also there's a group out there looking for more pickleball courts. I don't know if you played pickleball yet, Pat, but it's an amazing sport. Especially for seniors to get out and play. And I did try it once, and as easy as it looks, I pulled a calf muscle. So anyway, Pat, I'm looking forward to working with the community, getting out there and continuing the work that we've been doing and working with all the volunteer groups out there. Thank you.
Thank you to Joanne Poulin of eXp Realty for sponsoring this video interview.
Thanks, Joanne.
Pat Healy for the Laker News in Windsor Junction.